Welcome back to MonsterTamer, our 2D Pokemon-like RPG created with Phaser 3. In our last video, we started working on our new dynamic camera system. If you haven't seen the previous video, you can find the link in the description. As always, you can grab the project source code up to this point, along with the completed code for this video from the links in the description. I'll also include any assets you'll need to follow along. So let's get started. So currently, our logic that we have for updating our camera bounds based on our camera region objects, when we calculate which regions our player is currently in, we're always grabbing that first object in our array and we're setting our bounds to that object. This has the effect when our player goes to leave a current region, our camera no longer updates and we have this jump effect where our bounds is updated and locked to that new bounding area. Instead, when our player is in multiple regions, we'll want to update our logic so we have a more fluid transition. And so to do this, once our player is in more than one region, instead of just using one of the rectangles for our camera bounds, we're going to want to create a new dynamic rectangle based on which regions our player is currently in. And so for this rectangle, we're going to want this to consist of both of our regions that our player is currently in. And so to create this new rectangle, we'll need to grab our min and max values for our x and y positions for each rectangle our player is currently in, and use that to create our new rectangle. So in this example here, our minimum x value would be from our second region, and our max x value would also be from our second region. For our y value, our minimum y value is going to be from the top of our region, but our max y value is going to be from our first region. And so then based on those values, we can construct a new rectangle that encompasses both of our current regions. So now while our player is moving in this region, we're going to use this for our camera bounds, and then once our player moves and is only in one region, we'll update our camera bounds to only use that one rectangle. And so just as another example, if our player is up in this region here, where we have these two rectangles, our minimum x value will be from our region 2, our max x value will be for our region 2, and then our minimum y value will be from our region 3, and then our max y value will also be from our region 2. So our new dynamic rectangle in this example will be like this. That way it encompasses both of our regions. So now to add in this logic, let's come into our camera utils. We're going to add a new function. And for this function, we're going to call this getUnionBounds for camera regions. So now in this function, we'll have one argument, and this will be our camera regions that our game object is currently in. So we'll call that camera regions. So now in our function, we're just going to add a safeguard to make sure we have one element in our array. So if our camera regions, if our length, if it's equal to 0, then we just want to return undefined. Otherwise, we need to calculate our min and max values for both our x and y. To do that, let's do const. First we'll do our x values, we'll do min x. This is going to be equal to math.min. And now this function, we can provide an array of all of our x values from our camera region objects. To get that array, we're going to make a copy of our camera regions array. We're going to use our map method. And now this method will have our region, and we just want to return our region's x value. So now for our max x value, we'll want to take our region x value and add on our region's width. So let's copy these two lines of code. We'll do our y values now. So we'll have our min y, our max y. So now for our min y, we want to do our region y. Our max y will be our region y plus our region height. And now for our max values, we want to use our max function. Now with these values, we can return an object that has all the properties we need for our rectangle. So when we return our object, we'll have x. This will be our min x. Our y, this will be our min y. And now for our width, this is going to be our max x minus our min x. For our height, this will be our max y minus our min y. So with our logic in place, now we can update our update main camera bounds function. So let's remove our line of code here where we grab our region. We're going to make a new variable. We're going to call this union bounds. And we'll set this equal to get union bounds for camera bounds. And now we'll pass in our filtered regions. We'll add a safeguard. So if union bounds is equal to undefined, then we'll just return early. Otherwise, we want to use our union bounds to set the bounds on our camera. So now if we save, once our game refreshes, if we have our player move up and try to approach our second town, we'll see now our camera transitions is much more smooth. And then once our player leaves our second town, we'll see our camera bounds is updated and we no longer see our black bars. Alright, so we'll just test a few other scenarios. So if we have our player come up into our town, if we try moving down, our bounds should still be locked to that area. So now if we move to the edge of our town, oh, looks like we have an issue we'll need to fix. So once our player leaves our two regions and is now just in the town region, our camera jumps down. So we'll need to fix that. So let's test out some other scenarios. If we come to the edge, we shouldn't see our black bars. So if we move up to the top of our map, we get by our trees. And now we have the same issue where once our player enters our two regions, our camera jumps up. And now we have the same thing once we reach our forest. Alright, so before we fix those bugs, let's test our forest area. Oh, and once we reach our forest, we actually have a bug. So to fix our bugs, we're going to have to make some adjustments to our data and tiled. To fix our first bug, we'll need to update our overlap between our first and second camera bounds. For our first camera bounds, we want to expand our object up one more row so we increase our height. For our second object, we'll want to increase our height and then have it start down one more tile. And now to fix our issue with the overlap between our second and third, so our town and our entrance to our forest area, we'll need to expand our map a little bit. So come to our map, we're going to do resize. We'll want to increase our height to be 87 tiles. We'll want to fix our offset, so our map will be at the bottom again. We'll hit OK. So now for our map, we need to take all these tiles and shift them up here. So start with our treetop. Let's do our rectangular select tool. Let's grab these tiles. We'll copy, we'll paste. So we'll just move those up. Then we'll do our tree bottom. Now we want to clean up our clearing. Now we'll want to add in some trees to increase the length of our entrance to our forest. So start with our treetop. Let's select these trees here. We're going to copy, we'll paste. Now we're just going to expand these out. So we should have 4 rows of trees. We'll do the same thing on our other side. Now I'll do our tree bottoms. Let's copy these. We're going to paste them. And now for some padding, we're just going to add a few extra columns to both sides of our forest. So we'll start on this side. Let's do our tree tops. Now we just need to fix our tree bottoms. Now let's want to do the edge of our screen. We'll fix our tree tops. Let's do the other side. Now let's choose our ground layer. We'll do our grass tiles. We'll do random. Now I'll just do our paint fill. And then we're going to add in one more row here. And then same thing on the other side. So now for our mountain, we're going to have that expand up. Now we'll fix our trees over here. And now we just want to fix our trees in our clearing. So let's grab our eraser tool. And now let's just move our sign up. We'll erase our tile. We'll add in our tile here. Let's update our object. We'll want to move our NPC. And so now we'll need to update our collision layer. Let's do a rectangle select. We'll just delete all those tiles. Let's grab our stamp brush. We'll grab our collision layer. We'll add our tiles here. Grab the bottom of our trees. Now we'll need to fix our foreground layer. We're going to hide our background layer. I'm going to select these tiles here and just remove them. Now we'll do our stamp brush. Let's grab our tree and let's add in our tree tops. So let's paint these on. Then finally, we just need to update our camera bounds. So now for our second camera, we're going to increase our height so it comes all the way up to the top of this area here. For our third camera bounds, let's update our Y. We're going to do 1152. For our width, we'll do 1600. For our height, let's do 1088. Finally, we need to update our scene transition game objects. So let's make that layer visible. Let's move our 3 game objects to the top of our map. We'll go ahead and save, and we'll lock that layer. Alright, so with our changes here, this should address both of our issues. By expanding the size of our map, this gives us a little more wiggle room for our camera. By adding in a few additional rows and columns for our overlap check, it just helps with our padding for what is visible in our game. And so another option when you're designing your levels is we can always paint additional rows and columns here, but then not include those in our camera bounds, and then that way when we have these overlaps, those parts of our world will be visible to our player. So now to export out our data, we'll start with our JSONs. We're going to do File, Export As. We're going to do our main_1 JSON. Now we need to do our images, so I'm going to hide our collision and our objects. So let's do File, we're going to do Export as Image. So we're going to do our main_1 _level _background. Now for our foreground, we'll hide our background. File, Export as Image, main_1 level foreground. Now to fix our second bug, tied to when we go to load in our forest level, we need to update our camera bounds object to have our custom class. Inside our forest level, let's choose our camera bounds object layer. We'll grab our camera bounds object. Now from our class, let's do our camera bounds, and we'll give this an ID of 1. Now that we've updated our level, we just need to create our JSON file. So we'll do File, we'll do Export As. We want to do our forest_1 JSON, and we'll go ahead and save. Now we just need to update our files in our project. For our images, we'll want to place those under our assets, our images folder, MonsterTamer, our map, and then we'll want to replace our main_1 level background and foreground. For our JSON, that should go in our data folder. Now since we increased the size of our map, we'll need to update our events.json file for where our NPCs spawn. So for our first NPC, we'll want to add 6 to our 67, so we'll have 73. And then for our professor, we'll add 6 to that, and we'll be at 62. So after we save, we should be able to test our changes. So if we try having our player move up and down between our second town and our first main area, we should see when we transition between 1 and 2 cameras, we should no longer have the issue we had. Now let's go to the edge of our map. So right now we have 2 camera regions. And then once we get to the point where we only have 1 region, we no longer have that jump. Let's test the top of our map. So right now we only have our 1 camera region. Keep moving over, we're still in our 1 camera region. When we enter our forest, we'll see we have our 2 camera regions. Now if we move up, once we get into our clearing, we should only have our 1 region. Much better. Finally, to test our fix for our second bug, we'll come out to the top of our level. Let's go up to our entrance to our forest. Our scene should fade, we should fade into our forest level, and our player should be able to move around without any issues. Now that we've finished testing our camera system, let's go into our camera utils. Let's clean up our console log for where we log out our camera regions. We'll come back to our world scene. We'll comment out our line of code where we disable our wild monster encounters. And we'll come back to our preload scene. We'll want to start out back in our title scene. Alright, that's going to wrap up this episode of MonsterTamer. In our next video, we're going to work on updating our world scene to move some of our logic for tiled into our new tiled keys and tiled utils folder. You can find the complete source code for this video in the description below, along with the links to the full series if you need to catch up. If you enjoyed this episode, give it a thumbs up. It really helps others find the series. And if you've been enjoying these phaser tutorials and want to support the channel, I've set up a Ko-fi page. Even a one-time coffee helps me keep making more content like this, and the link's down in the description. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you'll know as soon as the next episode is out. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.